What is going on, everyone? And in this video I'll be giving you my UFC Columbus main card predictions for the upcoming event taking place this Saturday, March 26, 2022 in Columbus, Ohio, United States. UFC Fight Night Blaydes versus Daukaus. This is going to be one of those cards again. It's like every week, right? No, this actually I think could turn out to be a pretty solid main card. I think you have some pretty good fights on here. The main event, you know, Blaydes kind of know what we're going to get from him, and maybe Doc is able to shake some things up, but maybe the co-main event's going to be a little bit better. Matt Brown versus Brian Barboza, pretty solid. It could turn into a war, right? We could get a pretty good knockout. Asgar versus Kaikar France, that could be a great fight as well. Latifi versus Olynyk, maybe someone gets out, maybe we see the legend get the submission. And then for Joanne versus Borchev, you know, it could be a war too, maybe not. Either way, the main card should be, I would give it like what I would probably say like a 7 out of 10, right? Just kind of a little bit above average, maybe because of some of the fights, but nothing crazy. Maybe like a 6 out of 10, at least on paper. So we'll have to see. Now we're obviously coming off the UFC London card where I went 9-3, so I obviously did a lot better on this card. Now I think this one is. This card was definitely a solid card. I really enjoyed it. Tom Aspinall getting the victory over Alexander Volkov. Arnold Allen coming in there. Now see that one, man. He was able to go in there and pretty much, you know, his striking isn't crazy, but he just has enough power right there, and he kind of just put it on Dan Hooker, and you know Dan Hooker was just getting rocked in that fight. It was unfortunate to see, because Arnold Allen just pretty much did everything he needed to. So unfortunately for Dan Hooker, I don't think dropping down to featherweight was too much of a good idea. But obviously for Allen, he was able to get a finish in that one. So I wouldn't say he looked the best. I think his striking is still, you know, against someone who's not going to fold, right? Maybe against like Max Holloway. But that's why we got to start seeing these guys fight, you know, really good competition. Someone like Max Holloway, someone like Calvin Kattar, which I would like to see that fight, Arnold Allen versus Calvin Kattar. Paddy Pimblett getting the victory in that one. In my opinion, that fight was kind of set up for him to win anyways, but obviously getting the submission victory, the rear naked choke, that's pretty solid. Gunnar Nelson taking on Takashi Saito. Not the most exciting fight, but Nelson pretty much did what he needed to do to get that one. Obviously, with the grappling, he was just the better fighter. So, yeah, Molly McMahon getting that spinning back elbow. That was pretty nasty. Came out of nowhere. And then Topuria getting his victory over Jai Herbert. That was pretty good. In a fight where, you know, Topuria was definitely eating some shots, getting his ass beat a little bit, but he was able to get in there, and then he kind of just took over, and his power up close is just nasty. So, that being said, 9-3, pretty proud of it. Did a lot better on this UFC London card, so pretty good to see. We'll see how I do on the next one. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump in to the first fight on the main card. So in the first fight in the main card, we have Mark Diakiese taking on Vyacheslav Borchev. Now for Diakiese, he's coming into this fight. For Diakiese, he's coming into this fight with 14-5-0, and he's taking on Borchev, who has that 6-1 record. Not both. Diakiese's coming off that loss in his last fight, and he's coming off a loss against Rafael Alves via submission in round number 1. I believe he kind of took a knee to the dome, and then he just got submitted, fell on the floor, just got submitted. I don't know if like the knee, you know, necessarily, you know, took him out or anything like that, but it obviously led to him getting submitted, because I think he was basically going in for a takedown. Yeah, I don't know. Diakiese, I think early on, I think he had a lot of hype behind him, but now it's kind of not the case. He definitely has a good jab. He has good kicks. I would say he's an overall like average fighter, right? He can do a little bit of everything. It's not like he's just, you know, shooting in takedowns or anything like that. We saw in the Lando Venata fight, he was able to get 4 takedowns. Against Joe Duffy, he was able to get 3 takedowns. But again, those are against guys that are just not, you know, longer in here in the UFC at the top level. When he took on Rafael Fiziev, pretty much got outstruck in that fight. Nothing too crazy. Lost that fight via unanimous decision. Coming off of some losses too against Nazarov Hakparast, decision, but that was in 2018. Dan Hooker 2017. Drakkar Klose in 2017. So a lot of that stuff too is just kind of outdated at this point, because obviously fighters don't just stay the same for the next 5 years or 4 years. So we're gonna have to really see what he can go for here. But he's fighting a guy in Borshev, who's coming off of a victory against Dakota Bush via KO TKO in round number 1, and that was a pretty good for Borshev at least. You know, he did get taken down in that fight, but he was able to get back up, and he was able to make him pay for taking him down. Now, granted, he's Dakota Bush, Chris Duncan, Dana White Contender Series. And he's 6-1, so it's not like he's fought all these guys. Obviously, JKC has the most wins against people that actually were in the UFC. For Borshev too, I would say he's definitely have a really high output, really nasty hooks, good shots, good power as well. It's not a guy you want to start swinging on you, even if it's like wildly. And if he's able to stuff some of these takedowns right, and he starts smashing JKC's head in right with some hammer fists and all that, like we saw in the last fight, I mean, that could definitely cause some problems. And he's one of these guys where he's willing to eat some shots to just keep throwing down. So I think the biggest thing here is if Borshev is able to defend the takedowns and then obviously make him pay for it, I think he could probably even get a finish here. He needs to make it a dog fight too, right? Because I feel like JKC best way to win this fight is to fight it technical, use the good jab, use kicks, kind of keep that a little bit of a distance. Don't get too reckless with it, don't start brawling with him or anything like that, and kind of just fight really tactical and not, don't back up against the fence. Don't start taking big shots like wild shots from Borshev. But I think it's going to be hard for him to do, and I'm a little skeptical on JKC here just because he's coming off these 2 losses, and then he beat Lando Venata, and that was in 2019. Joe Duffy, who's retired in 2019, and then before that, I mean, I don't know. I think he came off really hot in his first 3 fights, but again, it wasn't really, it wasn't like the best. Once he started fighting better competition, he just started losing. And I'm not saying someone like Borshev is like the best guy to fight, right? But I do think he's not a slouch, and I do think he can cause some trouble here, especially if he's able to just keep biting down on his mouth guard, getting in the face of JKC, and then trying to piece him up and take him out and put that pressure on him. I don't know if JKC is going to be able to handle that. So that being said, I wouldn't count out JKC, obviously, because he has fought the better competition. He's been in the game in the UFC longer. But I do think he can definitely be broken against a guy who's going to get in his face and put that aggression. And I can see Borshev being that guy. So I'm going to go Vyacheslav Borshev. I'll take him to win by round 2, because I think in round 1 it might be a little bit of feel out, but I think in round 2, maybe JKC starts to slow down a little bit if Borshev is really putting on him and is just going for the kill. So I'm going to go Borshev by round 2, KO TKO. Move on into the next fight, the second fight on the main card, and we have Ilir, the sledgehammer Latifi, taking on Aleksandar, the boa constrictor Olynyk. For Latifi in this fight, he's coming in with a 16-8-1 no contest record, and then for Olynyk, he's coming in with a 59-16-1 record. So obviously the one with the majority of fights, but I mean, this guy is beyond predictable, right? So you got to beat this guy, right? If you want to go somewhere in the UFC, you just have to get past him in the heavyweight division. I guess you could call him a gatekeeper, but I just think he's a guy they throw at you to see, what are you gonna do with this, right? So if Latifi can't beat this guy, it's not a good look, and he's gonna be undersized, but he's gonna be undersized in a lot of these fights because he's a smaller height disadvantage, obviously, with a lot of these guys. I mean, he definitely had 240 if that's what he weighed in at his last fight, so he's definitely a big guy, Latifi, but this can get sketchy, and I think this is one of those fights where it's really sketchy. For Olynyk, he's coming off of a loss against Sergey Spivak via unanimous decision. Not the best. Spivak beat Greg Hardy, but I don't, Jesus Christ, I think anyone at this point could beat Greg Hardy as long as they survive and pretty much just fight smart, really, just beat Greg Hardy. But so he's coming off that loss against Sergey Spivak. He did get one takedown in that fight. Against Chris Daukaus, he got pieced up into oblivion. Daukaus just put it on him and lit him up. Against Derek Lewis, he died. So his last one is coming off in May 9th of 2020 against Fabricio Verdum, who obviously is no longer in the UFC and is also kind of on his way out, in my opinion. And he won that fight by split decision. Before that, he defeated Maurice Green by submission armbar. And yeah, I mean, pretty much all of his wins, pretty much all of his past 3 wins in the past, like, 5 years basically have all been by submission. So this dude's gonna go out here and try to submit, right? He's not gonna. Olynyk is not gonna be one of these guys who, unless I guess like Latifi's just absolutely gassed and just tired. But even then, I still feel like he might go for a submission. Olynyk's one of these guys who's gonna try to grapple with you. He's gonna use his awkward striking to get in close, get a hold of you, and then put you against the fence or just take you down. And then once he's on top of you, the dude's looking for submissions, right? So it's pretty predictable. It's not like he's gonna come out with like a flying knee, right, and then just start kickboxing with you. No, like this dude wants to take you down. Now for Latifi, he's coming off a win over Tanner Bosner via split decision. I mean, they credited Latifi with 10 strikes landed, and versus Tanner Bosner's 45 strikes landed. Latifi did get 2 takedowns. That's something though. If we saw him in his loss against, now granted, Latifi lost against Derek Lewis via unanimous decision in 2020 against Derek Lewis. Again, very low output as far as striking is concerned, but he did get 3 takedowns. So he's very capable of getting these takedowns. Against Ozdemir, he got 1 takedown, but he lost. He got KO'd in the second round. Against Corey Anderson, he lost via decision. So he is capable of getting takedowns, and he has a little bit of a low output though, right? So he's not throwing a lot of volume, which I don't think is really going to matter in this fight because I don't think either guy is really going to be throwing a lot of volume. Against Ovince St. Preux, he was able to get that submission victory there, so that's pretty good because Ovince St. Preux is a tough guy. Tyson Pedro, he beat him. He got 4 takedowns in that fight. I mean, he's fought like he has a loss against Jan Blachowicz, so he's fought some pretty good guys, obviously, in the division. He's been around for a while inside the UFC. Yeah, granted, it wasn't at heavyweight, but he was fighting at light heavyweight. I think Latifi, if he loses this fight, it's just not a good look. Now, I don't know. The thing that does sketch me out, though, is if you look at Latifi, I do think he starts to gas a little bit. And obviously, if Olynyk's able to take advantage of that, and Latifi, if he doesn't land a lot of volume and land a lot of big shots early on Olynyk, or Olynyk survives that for whatever reason, I can obviously see Olynyk, going in for that takedown, getting the grappling going, and then, next thing you know, he's submitting Latifi fairly easy just because he's gassed out. But I do think Latifi, if he does put it on Olynyk early on, and he does land some pretty good shots, and not just gas out, right? You gotta really pick your shots on this one. Kill him with speed, land those heavy shots, and put him away, and do it fairly quickly, because if this fight gets dragged out, Olynyk is gonna definitely try to go for that grappling, and as old as this guy is, and as big as his record is, he's gonna be in there, right? He's gonna be in there trying to get a submission. So I really think it's Latifi's fight to lose, and if Latifi does lose this fight, it's just not a good look. So I'm gonna go Ilir Latifi to defeat Alexei Olynyk. Hopefully, I'm gonna take him to win in round number 1 by KO TKO. And then we move on into the third fight on the main card, and we have a pretty solid fight, not a welterweight fight. We have a pretty solid fight, a flyweight fight between Asgar Bullet Askarov, and he'll be taking on Kai Kara Don't Blink France. 14-0-1 for Askarov, and then 23-9-0 and 1 no contest for France, Kai Kara France. Both are coming off of a win. Askarov is 14. Yeah, he's solid, man. Like, this guy is really solid. We saw him pretty much just destroy Joseph Benavidez in Benavidez's last fight inside of the UFC, and then he announced retirement. He won that fight via unanimous decision, and he was just overall the better fighter, right? So he utilizes the takedowns fairly decently. Like, he's really good at getting takedowns. He has good control when he gets those takedowns. Really good front kick. We saw that in his last fight against Benavidez. Really was trying to land that front kick. Big power in close, pretty nasty shots in close. I will say, though, when he did break away from Benavidez, if anything, if you even want to call it something, he did get clipped a little bit when he was like breaking off from the clinch. So maybe he needs to tighten that up a little bit. But that's just based on watching his last fight. But that's not anything too crazy. And I would say, obviously, for Askarov, I think pretty much if you look at his last fights, let me see here. Askarov. Yeah, so all decision, right? So even when he lost against Brandon Moreno, or split decision, and it was a draw or whatever, even in that fight, he was able to get takedowns against Brandon Moreno. Tim Elliott got takedowns on him, but he still won that fight. Against Pantoja, he got 2 takedowns, and against Benavidez 5 takedowns. So he's definitely a takedown heavy guy, but at the same time he can do a lot of other things, and that's why I think he's really well rounded. So it's gonna be a tough guy to beat Askarov, and he's used to grinding out these decisions, right? So he definitely knows what it's like to fight all these rounds, right? He's not trying to go out there and land like one big shot and then get out or whatever. For Kai France, he's coming off that win over Cody Garbrandt, round 1 KO TKO. Honestly, I think Garbrandt's kind of on his way out as far as his chin's concerned. I just think his fighting style is not the brightest, and his chin just won't let him fight like that anymore. So yes, it's a good win, but I also think if you want to, I also would assume that like Askarov would probably do the same kind of thing to him, right? And maybe get his first KO inside the UFC. So again, I wouldn't think about it too much, right? I do think it's good, but I'm not going to bank a lot of his success on him beating Cody Garbrandt at this point. Good takedown defense for Kai France. Good takedown defense, which obviously is going to need to have against someone who's trying to literally, landing 4, 3, 2, 5 takedowns a fight against top level competition. He does have a high output. France does have a high output, so that's good to see. Another thing where Askarov has a little bit of a lower output, but if France is able to put on that volume, right, and kind of get in his face, be aggressive, he might be able to slow down a lot of the overall game plan of Askarov. I think Kara France's power, I guess you could say, is pretty underrated, right? So when he throws shots, it's not like, I feel like he wouldn't be known for landing. He's not like a Derek Lewis, he's not known for just knocking dudes out, right? But I do think he can definitely crack when he gets in close, and if he throws one of these hooks, it's kind of wild too. It's like, it's not really his setting up. He kind of gets in there and then just throws, and then next thing you know, the guy like gets clipped or whatever. I think he needs to create chaos in this fight, right? Because if Askarov, like I said, if he's settling into the striking, he's settling into the grappling, he's going to probably win this fight via decision. So for Kai France, he needs to settle in into his zone and create that chaos. And he has to realize that this fight is going to be a lot harder than his fight against Garbrandt, right? So if he has that mindset of like, well, I just knocked this dude out, I'm going to knock out everyone, I don't think Askarov is Cody Garbrandt. So Askarov is very well put together as far as his game is concerned, and he's definitely going to be in there trying to front kick you, land some pretty good strikes, take you down, hold you down, grind you out, right? So it's going to be a dangerous fight. So I'm going to go Askarov to defeat Kai France. I just think he's going to be the overall better fighter, and although Kai France has a good chance to win this fight if he can like create that chaos, get in his face and start landing bombs, I just think overall though, Askarov is going to be a little bit too much. So I'm going to go Askarov to defeat Kai France. I'll take him to win by a pretty, I don't want to say dominant, I'll just say a pretty competitive decision. And then move on into the next fight, and we have Matt the Immortal Brown taking on Brian Bam Bam Barberena. 25-18 for Matt Brown, 16-8 for Brian Barberena. Now this fight is gonna be, I think this fight is gonna be like the chaotic fight, right? This is the fight where some dude's gonna get cracked, and then it might be like a war back and forth, or some dude might just, one of these guys might get slept, right? When you look at Matt Brown, obviously the veteran in the game, fought top level competition, been in the game around for a while, maybe a little bit too long. Although I guess he hasn't gotten absolutely destroyed as of late, so it might be just a little bit better than some like Donald Cerrone, who seems to be on his way out. Coming off a win over Diego Lima, he's one of these guys where I feel like he just throws the fight every time. Like he doesn't really have the best fight IQ, and he kind of just, maybe, I guess his chin isn't really trustworthy anymore at all, right? Because I mean, he has 3 wins, I guess. So 2 wins, split decision, and then over Chad Laprise in 2018, got the KO TKO. But other than that, he hasn't really done well. So it is a win. So he got that KO. He landed that long right overhand on Diego Lima, put him to sleep. Before that, he lost to Carlos Condit via unanimous decision. Before that, he lost to Miguel Baeza via KO TKO in round number 2. He beat Ben Saunders, but again, who wasn't beating Ben Saunders, right? You're not gonna get knocked out by Ben Saunders. He beat Diego Sanchez, another guy where if you're losing to Diego Sanchez at this point, it's not a good look. He lost to Donald Cerrone, but that was 2016. So Jake Ellenberger, Damian Maia. So yeah, I mean that you're going far too back. So what did he look like in his last fight against Diego Lima? I mean, he looked good. I mean, he did look older, right? He does look old, but I think he still carries that aggression. His cardio looked pretty good, right, for the aggression he was bringing. Obviously, fought the better competition, so he's not really going to be in there shocked about anything. Will Matt Brown go for takedowns? I mean, that's kind of interesting because we've seen Bryan Barberena get taken down and we've seen him struggle with that. I'm not saying that Matt Brown's going to be diving in for takedowns, but I do think that could play into here, especially if he's able to do some violence on the floor. I think Matt Brown, too, as well, would probably lose against a really good striker and would get out-grappled by a really good grappler, but I don't think Bryan Barberena is either of those. I think he's pretty average in both fields, right? Well, definitely not in the takedown department, but I think in the striking department, I think it's pretty average, right? It's not. I think Matt Brown would probably still be considered the better striker, the one with the better power. For Bryan Barberena, he has a pretty high output, 5.4 strikes landed per minute, but then he also obviously gets absorbed more strikes absorbed per minute as well, 4.77. He's more of a dog fighter, right? He's going to get in there. He's going to try to brawl. He tries to create that chaos with that high output. It's definitely not the most. There's so many situations where I can see him just getting clipped by Matt Brown if he starts getting wild with it, right? And I would say, like, as the fight goes on, he starts to get a little bit sloppy. So I think if Matt Brown keeps that aggression, keeps that pace, doesn't get crazy with it, kind of just did what he did against Diego Lima, I think we might start seeing openings for against Bryan Barberena, and then Matt Brown might be able to just pretty much piece him up. But Barberena is tough, right? So I don't also see Barberena like getting slapped necessarily. Like we've seen this guy take some damage, right? He did lose against Vicente Luque in round 3 via knee. Took a kick against Randy Brown, got finished in round number 3. But this dude's tough, right? So I don't see him getting like slept in the first round by Matt Brown, and it could be a war. So, but I think if Matt Brown just lands the better strikes, puts that aggression on him, and takes advantage of like when Barberena starts getting a little bit too wild with it, and he starts to get a little bit sloppy, that's where I really think Matt Brown will shine. And if he can mix in any sort of grappling there, which I think is Barberena's weakness, then that'll be good as well. So. Yeah, I mean, Jason Witt took Barberena down 8 times. Darian Weeks took him down 4 times. Anthony Ivy took him down 5 times. So yeah, I mean, his weakness is definitely wrestling. So I'm gonna go Matt Brown. It is a little sketchy because obviously it's Matt Brown, and this dude is, he's definitely older and not what he was when he was younger, but I still think he has enough in it to win. He doesn't. Now, if he gets slapped in 10 seconds and he looks like a jellyfish on the floor, well, then never picking him again. But until I see that, we'll go with Matt Brown. So I'm going to go with Matt Brown to defeat Bryan Barberena. I'll take him to win by a decision. Move on into the co-main event of the evening, and we have the women's flyweight division. We have Joanne JoJo Wood, the name change, 15-7, taking on Alexa Grosso, 13-3. Better boxer, better striker, I think is going to be Alexis Grosso. As far as like being the technical like striker, right, and having good head movement and having like the better combinations. As far as boxing is concerned, obviously probably Alexa Grosso. Now, the one that's going to be like the grittier fighter, I mean, I think Wood is definitely going to be that fighter. I think she's going to try to make this a dogfight, and I think that's exactly what she needs to do if she wants to win this fight. She has to brawl, right? She has a pretty good kicking game as well, so she can kind of lean on that, especially if Grosso's highly relying on her grappling. Grosso's not going to be diving in, not relying on her boxing if she's relying on it too much and like not defending any kicks or whatever. Grosso's not going to be diving in for takedowns though, so obviously Wood probably was going to try to go after that. I would assume she's going to try to close the distance, clinch with her, probably not really want to strike with her unless she can make it turn into a brawl. Wood has multiple losses via submission. Another thing, though, I don't think she has to really worry about, though, against Grosso necessarily. Yeah, I don't think she's gonna get submitted by Grosso, so I don't really think that's a problem. And she doesn't have to worry about getting taken down in this fight too much at all, really. So I would say like Wood can make this highly competitive, and she probably will. But at the same time, I think Grosso's striking on the feet is going to look very different, and I think it's going to be a lot better. And if she can get that takedown, if she can defend takedowns, and if she can, just fight a boxing match essentially, I think she could win this fight pretty. But it might be a split decision, right? We've seen Wood actually lose some split decisions, just decisions in general. So I would assume Grosso being the better striker, but Wood is going to make this one tough. So I would definitely stay away from this fight if you have anything on it or something, just because this shit is like, oh, split decision, and it goes like to Wood, right? But then Grosso had the better boxing, but she got taken down or something. So I'm not really sure. This could be a close fight, but I would assume like at least on the feet, and I just think that's going to be enough here, especially if she really tries to go for the kill and all that. Grosso's going to be able to piece her up on the feet and get a decision victory. I do worry if she gets taken down, if that like gets more points, I guess you could say, in a decision victory. So I'll go Alexa Grosso on this one. I'll take her to win by a pretty close split decision, just because I think Wood's going to make this one tough. In the main event of the evening, so for the main event, we have Curtis Razor Blaydes taking on Chris Daukaus. 15-3, 1-no contest for Blaydes, 12-4 for Daukaus. Blaydes is coming off of a victory in his last fight. Obviously not a really good fight that anyone really cared to watch. I think it was pretty there wasn't really anything going on in that one. Blaydes coming off that win over Jairzinho Rozenstruik of a unanimous decision in a fight where, man, it was just like, was it like the third round when he actually got clipped? Because Rozenstruik landed like 18 shots in the entire fight, but when he did get clipped, you saw Blaydes like get a little bit of wobbled in there, and then he just instantly dives in for a takedown, and Rozenstruik really had nothing for him. But Rozenstruik caught him with that knee, and I think between eating a flying knee to the dome, or an uppercut to the face like we saw with Derek Lewis, I think just as much for some of these fighters, the game plan is there to beat him, right? So Blaydes is going to come in here and want to take you down. He's not going to be striking with you the entire fight. He's not going to be the faster fighter in this fight, at least on the feet. Daukaus is going to be the faster fighter. So Daukaus really has to find a way to defend the takedown, right? And I'm not sure if he can defend the takedown normally, so he's going to have to mix in some big shots, right? So what would that be? The knee, just an uppercut to the dome. Just plan for it, right? And keep that distance. But then when you do close in on Blaydes, you really got to let go. And Daukaus has fast hands. I'm just a little bit concerned that if Daukaus isn't able to quickly put Blaydes away. And Blaydes is a tough guy, right? So he did get sent to the shadow realm by Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou. But at the same time, other than that, he's stayed in there. He's been wobbled by plenty of people, but he's stayed in the fights. And his cardio for his wrestling, he can slow down, but I would say it's pretty decent. He's definitely one of these heavyweights where he can get constant takedowns and control and not be super gassed out on the floor, right? He's not one of those guys because obviously he trains at the higher elevation. Like I said, for Daukaus, he's going to have to do a lot, right? So he's going to have to defend the takedowns. He's going to have to go early. He's going to have to land speed early. I'm not really sure what we're going to see from him if the fight goes like 3 rounds or whatever and he's getting taken down consistently. He could be pretty gassed out. But he's going to have to go early. He's going to have to defend those takedowns more than just defending them, right? He's going to have to set up some knees. If he gets pushed against the fence and Blaydes is trying to take him down, you got to start slamming elbows in the back of his head. Like, you got to do something early and you got to do it fast. Otherwise, I think Blaydes sets into his game. He takes him down, and Blaydes might even get a KO TKO late, or he might be able to, whenever he takes him down, I guess, successfully, and not just like take him down as in like you know, maybe it's early on, Daukaus pops back up one time or something. I mean, like when he takes him down and then next thing you know, Blaydes is just dropping bombs on his head, that's not going to be good. And I think maybe after that first round, depending on how it goes, if Blaydes is able to settle in that second round, I think he can take him down. I think he can start to just land some heavy shots on top of him. Because, yeah, Blaydes, like, this is not a guy you want on top of you, regardless. I do think he's chinny, but it could just because what we have that like recency bias where it was Derek Lewis that like landed that shot, so it's like we have seen him wobble, so it's kind of sketch. But then at the same time, that wrestling he can fall back on. I mean, against Volkov, he landed 14 takedowns. Like that's pretty good. Granted, it wasn't the most exciting thing ever, and he went 25 rounds, but you know he did what he needed to do to get the victory. So I think if Blaydes can survive early on and get those takedowns, I think he can eventually finish him. I don't want to say late. I want to say this is all going to go down in that second round. So I'm going to go Curtis Blaydes to defeat Chris Daukaus. I'll take him to win by round 2 KO TKO, but man, he's got to be careful. So that'll do it, guys, for my UFC predictions for this event coming up. And we're looking forward to it. Just because I think... I think like cards like this, you think like, what is this card, right? Like who's on this card? Like who really cares? But then next thing you know, it's an actually decent card, and then you know people are talking about something or whatever, something crazy happens, right? So maybe not count it out so much at first, but we'll see. Thank you guys for watching. Leave your comments down below. Tell me who you think is gonna win these fights. Hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.